All righty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving online entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am super excited to have our guest with us today, Rebecca Murray. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, Heather. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad we're finally here together.
Right? I know it took us a little bit to get scheduled, and here we are. And I love the title for those of you that are not watching Rebecca on video, Edutainer. So for those of you that don't know Rebecca, as a director and producer, it is Rebecca's job to put clients at ease and bring out their very best in front of another person, a camera, or an audience of thousands. She has produced everything from 30-second TV commercials to mini documentaries and live streamed events, and feels strongly that everyone has the ability to be a star. Her biggest thrill comes from teaching clients how to protect, perfect, and project an image that truly reflects how they see themselves, their brand, and their organization. Rebecca infuses fun into her presentation coaching, edutaining, team building, and her one-woman show through her company, Showcase Your Shine. Get ready to maximize your red carpet potential with our guest, Rebecca Murray. Welcome, Rebecca. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. And I also am happy to be here. And before we got going this today, to find out more about you, Heather, and all these things that we have in common.
Turns out we do have a few things in common. And the latest, I'm actually eager to jump into this one because we were talking, Rebecca could, I'm sure, talk with us about many topics today. I know we spent quite a bit of time connecting in a call before deciding to schedule you on the podcast, and it was so much fun. And what we ultimately decided on was the topic of confidence, right? And part of what came out, which I didn't know because it wasn't in your bio, was that you have worked for years as a dog trainer and actually a pet trainer because you've worked with other animals besides dogs. And I was just telling Rebecca, we just adopted a puppy a couple months ago now. And so we're kind of on the tail end of the COVID puppy craze, but it still caught us.
Right. There's no better way, I think, to learn about leadership and confidence than to be trained by somebody in relation to your own pet relationships. So for me, going back to when I had a senior dog that I actually met him, his name is Murphy. He was 7 years old. He was my husband's dog. So he was already easy, broken in and bordering on a senior citizen by then. So then when he passed away at 15 years and 3 months, then my heart was broken into pieces. In fact, I was in such a state of trauma losing him that my husband almost put me in a hospital. I mean, I was just a wreck. And so everybody said, you need to get a puppy. You need to get a puppy. So I finally did. I went to a breeder and got a puppy. And then I had what is called new puppy shock syndrome. That's what I call it anyway, where I was just in shock over how difficult this puppy was, how bad he was, how aggressive he was. So I found a place to take him for training, realized it's actually me who gets the training, and learned through that it was a lack of leadership, my leadership specifically, that was contributing to all of the problems that I was having with little Max, was his name. And in learning about dog behavior and how to become a better leader, a better pet parent, I was all in. I said, this is what I want to do next with my life. I want to become a dog trainer, a pet trainer. Did that for 12 years, trained thousands of dogs, worked with hundreds of pet parents and generations of their dogs. Actually, one would pass away, they would call me, I would come out and help them with the puppy. And boy, did I learn so much, not only about myself, but what it means to be a confident leader. I mean, somebody can call themselves a leader. Anyone can say that, but it's really the confidence that a leader projects that determines if they're the kind of leader that we would want to follow.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. And, we just worked probably a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago. We spent 5 or 6 hours with a local trainer in our home, working with Maggie, mostly working with us, right? Exactly as you say. And it was just so fascinating and so much fun to watch her demonstrate, exactly how something should be done in a way that makes it clear for the dog to understand.
Yes.
And my daughter, who's 4, is quite intuitive. Actually, both my kids are really, really like just over the moon, pretty much about any pet. My son really loves horses. My daughter, loves all the things, doggies, kitties, bunnies, you name it. And of course, my son is now totally sold on this puppy as well. But it turns out my daughter is better at getting Maggie to do what she wants. She's learned, and I don't know if it's just because she's a little girl and she listened a few moments longer. Aiden's a pretty busy little guy. His brain goes lots of places. But she knows the difference between her strong voice and any other voice, right? And so she knows, and I've actually put her in charge of doing some of Maggie's daily brain games. And she had to learn right away what got Maggie to respond versus Maggie just totally ignoring her, right?
Yes.
And so she would stand calmly and, get a little stronger voice going. And it was just really fascinating to watch her figure that out and to be able to execute it now where she can get Maggie to do anything. And not only that, the other day, because I told her, I said, Henley, I want you to do brain games with Maggie. She went and ran Maggie through the whole routine and did not say a word. Didn't vocally say a word.
Wow.
And Maggie still did everything that she wanted. And she said to me when she was done, Mom, I didn't use my words. And she still knew what I wanted her to do. And did the whole, and I thought, it's so fascinating because our dog trainer actually told us that is how intuitive pets are, is that they see in visual images. So if you convey something to them visually, that's actually how they best interpret it. And it's why we screw it up all the time, is because we're saying something vocally, and we're actually holding a different image in our mind. Like we're thinking about what a crazy puppy they are while we're telling them to calm down. They see our image of like, you're a crazy puppy. And so they act crazy, right? It was
right. If it's incongruent, if it's not cohesive, they'll pick, and humans are exactly the same way. We're exactly the same way. If somebody's telling us something, but their body language is saying something else, we are going to react to the body language and believe the body language and the gestures over anything that they say.
Right. And even if that's true, and even if their body language is not telling us much, if their intentions or their thoughts are different than what, like you can just sense it. You can tell that what they're saying is not authentic, it doesn't land with you, whatever, right? I think we all have kind of a sixth sense in that way if we tune into it. But it was really interesting to watch my daughter in a very short time learn to demonstrate those skills and then totally take them to the next level. It delighted me. And as much as I was surprised, I was also not surprised.
Now she's only 4, you say? And how old is the puppy?
Puppy is about to turn 7 months in about another week.
Oh my gosh. So the puppy, and what breed is this puppy?
She is a mix. She's 40% cattle dog, Australian cattle dog. She's about 20% shepherd, 20% lab, 10% chow, of all things you would not know. And then another 10% that is kind of undetermined. She looks like she has some hunting dog in her. She's got like really dark eyeliner around her eyes. She's a beautiful dog.
Did you do a DNA test to figure all this out? Yeah. Okay. Figured. Yes. Yeah. Well, isn't that wonderful? And what your daughter's name again is?
Henley.
Henley, I can already see Henley in school and beyond, the leader of any group that she's in. She will rise up and she will take control, and everyone will look at her, and she will have that powerful presence where people are like, I don't know what it is about her, but I will follow her. That's what she has developed. And it's part of that she already had. And the dog and the dog training just allowed her to
express it.
Yeah. How wonderful to see that in her.
Well, it's, the pet ownership, it is really fascinating, like to view that through the lens of leadership, right?
Yes.
Because when I was listening to our dog trainer, and, she used a lot of the same language, and it was like, dogs need a leader. And even though we know that, like, the thing that I immediately learned and that our trainer told me is like, you touch her too much. Like, in order to get her to respond to your voice, you cannot be touching her while you give her commands, petting her, trying to help her calm down. Like, no, you have to be hands off, right? And that was kind of an epiphany of like, oh yeah, she needs to train to my voice. She's not going to do that if I'm sending other signals or touching her, being physical with her, right? Because it's going to stimulate her in other ways, and she's not going to be just paying attention to my voice.
Yeah. Exactly right. And like your daughter demonstrated so well, you don't even need to use your voice. You can just use your eye contact, your gestures, your body language, your powerful presence to let the dog know, yes, this is good. Come over here, sit, stay, all of those things.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and going back to leadership too, because I find myself always making excuses like, okay, I'm going to use a dog analogy here. All right. Okay. I'm going to use a dog analogy here. Okay. And so we look at some of the complexities of being a leader in an employment situation, for example, and make analogies to what we see in successful dog training, and also households where the dog is running the house, where the dog is running over the leader, quote unquote, the leader of the house, all of the children. It's utter chaos. And really the solution to that issue in a household with a pet, the solution in a business with employees, is for the leader to rise up and step into their brilliance and get some help if like a dog parent would, seek out coaching, seek out mentorship, so that you can step into your brilliance as a leader.
Especially in the people scenarios, right? What do you feel like are the biggest challenges people face when it comes to confidence? Or maybe it's really just around expressing confidence, right? Demonstrating confidence. What do you, in your experience of coaching and working with people, and all of your experience on, video and in the production directing side of the world, what have you learned?
Well, part of it is being open to feedback. And I think going back to the dog training, where I learned to give appropriate feedback and lots of positive feedback versus the negative. Can you imagine a dog trainer being successful? No, bad dog, right? This poor dog is going to run away every time they see you, because there's two states for a dog. It's the happy, confident dog, or it's the terrified dog. And what we talk about in terms of shaming, you might see videos on dog shaming. It's really, there's no way to shame a dog, but there's absolutely a way to confuse and cause fear inside of a dog. And that's actually what we see. It's not being shamed, but people can be shamed. It's the same triggers. It's the same triggers in a person. It's fear, confusion. Those are the things that shut down the brain in terms of receiving feedback. So when I work with a client, for example, for the first time, many of my clients will say, I look terrible on camera. I hate my voice. I don't like how I look. I blah, 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 blah. So, well, after today, that will be the last time you'll be able to say that. where you really believe it. Because after our session, you will see yourself differently. And part of somebody seeing themselves differently is having someone like you or me, for example, on the other end of the camera, on the other side of the camera, giving them that positive reinforcement that they've never heard before or never believed. And I will always have a client, if I'm taking pictures, I will have them look at their beautiful image in the back of the camera. And then I'll say, you can go ahead and say it now. Say what? I'm beautiful. Okay, I'm beautiful. No, I want you to say it like you believe it. You believe it, right? Yes, I believe it, Rebecca. I'm beautiful. So protecting that image, that's the other in the bio that you read. It is, I think, in terms of protecting how we come across, not letting anything get out on social media or out into the world that doesn't really show you how you want to see yourself. And that all connects with self-confidence. When you see an image that looks confident, and you're like, oh, that's me, then you it's feeding back to your own brain of an inner belief. That inner belief. It's reinforcement.
Right. And it all starts, I think, with our inner beliefs. I'm curious, talk to us about your transition from dog training, right? And learning this whole connection with confidence and leadership into, because now what you're doing, right, is quite a bit different than that. I mean, I know that the dog training wasn't even in your bio. I love that it's there though, in your background. How did you get into the line of work that you're doing now?
Well, it started in working with pets. What I realized was how powerful video was to help people understand how to work with their pets. Because it is a scary and confusing thing for a lot of pet parents. When in working with families, sometimes the family is on the brink of imploding because things are have been in such turmoil for many, many months. They say statistically, on average, from the time that someone starts thinking about getting rid of their pet because there's so much chaos, they keep that pet in the house for another 8 months, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. So in working with these pet parents and using video as part of a training tool, training for themselves, working with their pets, recording the training so that everybody, let's say somebody wasn't there for the training, that way the dad, the mom, the kids, whoever was absent can be a part of that. I realized, wow, I want to learn how to use video more purposefully for many kinds of businesses. So this particular business, where I was a dog trainer, was managed by a dealership. They sold to a manufacturer, and I had to decide, was I going to continue working in that capacity or do something else? Now, I live up in Skagit County, which is 50 miles north of Seattle. It's about halfway between Vancouver, BC and Seattle, Washington. And it's a pretty small community, far away from the big city of Seattle or Vancouver. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll just go to work for somebody else. And what I didn't realize was the wages up here for someone like me, I would have to take a drastic pay cut. So here's what I decided then. That was in the beginning of 2013. I said, either I can take a pay cut and work for someone else who could also sell their company and I'd be back in the same situation that I was, or I could take a pay cut and work for myself. Because I knew I would have a steep learning curve. I didn't really know much about video. All I knew was that I wanted to learn, and I believed that I could. It would be a steep learning curve, but I would find the resources to learn the skills. And this is my what I felt was my superpower. I'm very good with people. I'm good at meeting people. I always have been. When I was a little girl, I used to sell things door to door and have no fear whatsoever. I sold life insurance for 7 years. I would drive myself out to these remote business parks, park the car, and tell myself, you are not allowed to get back in this car until you have walked and introduced yourself to every single business in this business park. Then and only then can you get back in the car and drive home. And it was hard. And some days I didn't want to do it. And some days I didn't like doing it. There's a lot of rejection, of course, but I learned to overcome it and realized that my success in being in my 20s, selling life insurance, of all things, this invisible thing to people much older than myself, I thought, you know what, if I can do this, I can do anything. I can do anything I choose. And so now fast forward, I was 51 when I started my video business. I knew that nobody would hire me in this business because A, I didn't know very much. B, the age factor. C, I didn't want to drive out. I didn't want to drive, out of the county every single day as I'd been doing as a dog trainer for years and years. So I said, okay, I'm going to start my business. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to join the chambers. I'm going to jump into the community, get to know as many people as I can. And then I would get a business card. I would call them up afterward. And I would say, hi, Rebecca, I met you at the whatever it was, networking thing. I'm wondering if I've taken a look at your website. I don't see any video. I'm wondering if you'd be interested in talking to me about utilizing some video and getting it on your website. Sure. Yeah, we'd like to talk. And I knew I didn't know much back then, so I couldn't charge. I didn't feel like I could charge much. So essentially I put myself into an internship situation where I said, you can pay me this little amount. I'll do these videos for you. And that gave me an opportunity to learn, build my skills, build my confidence. And every time I did that, the next person I sought out, I could ask for more money and I knew I would do better. Then, again and again. And finally, I built my business to a point where I didn't have to call people. They called me. And now I'm transitioning into speaking. So I'm actually, for the most part, referring business to other video production companies in town. And now there are several in town and they're all wonderful. So that's wonderful for people looking for videographers. But what I do now is focus more on, although I do have a studio, that's where I'm speaking from right now. And I do work with some clients, producing podcasts and I have photo sessions. That's just work that sort of comes to me and a sort of long-term things. What I love doing now is speaking and training and helping other people gain the skills to be on video, to do a podcast, to speak in front of 1,000 people on a stage. And then I also have my one-woman show, The Confidence Equation, which is all about, it's sort of a musical / comedy / TED Talk. It's all in one.
I love that. That's the edutainer title, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Super fun. So you've actually been using video then for quite a while. I love that it started in doing your work with the dog training. That's super fun. I remember really early on in my legal career, because I had gotten asked with another attorney in our office to speak at a CLE. I was pretty young. I was, not overly enthusiastic about being pegged for this. And so we hired, I don't even know what her title was, a speaking coach of some kind, right? And so she came in and we had to videotape, right, my presentation. And that was so painful. I remember having to watch that back. And it was I highly do not recommend the experience. I'm joking because obviously it's really beneficial to have to do that. But at the time it felt so painful. And it was super helpful visually to see what was going on, because when you are presenting, I don't think that many times we're even aware of some of the little things that we're doing, right? That other people are going to catch on to really quickly. So from that perspective, it's just such a powerful tool. I joke Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, as you're saying that, one of the things that I consciously do when I'm on a podcast is not do what I call the bobblehead, because one of the things that I tend to do when I'm talking to somebody is yes, like affirming,
acknowledge them. Yes.
And then I would watch myself back and I'm like, oh, stop with the bobblehead. And it's really hard not to do it. But the only way, to stop is to painfully watch yourself.
All right. And as a podcaster, I tell everybody, you should definitely do your own editing for the first few episodes. And so mostly you're saying bobblehead and I'm like, oh, I'm probably doing that. I don't even pay attention to myself on the video because I'm so focused on the audio, right? But even the process of doing my own editing for the first handful of episodes, oh my goodness. So good. Again, so painful, but such a good exercise to go through because it really informs the way that you pace yourself. You try to pay attention to certain things that you maybe weren't paying attention to before, right? So helpful, and always so helpful to have the feedback and advice from a coach who has walked so many people through the process of sorting this out. I think the thing that is so unique about video is across the board, I think it's a little bit like public speaking. Like most people don't want to do it. Right? Even though they know they should. It's one of those things that they're like, oh, I know I should have a video on my website. I know I should be doing more video in my social media marketing or whatever, but it just tends to be a big resistance area.
I totally agree. And part of that is that I don't want to be in the spotlight for a lot of people. I'm afraid of how I will come across because I don't have the belief in myself that, again, those other things that I look good, that I sound good. I'm afraid I won't seem intelligent, all of these things. And, I'll tell you, the watching yourself back, that's one of the great things about Zoom is that it makes it so easy to record and watch also with not only the more objective, try to be objective with yourself, but also hugely appreciative of yourself. So what I tend to do, and this is what I tell my clients to do, when you see yourself, goes back to the dog training. When you see yourself doing something that you think was brilliant, you say it out loud. You are brilliant. I am brilliant. And you start training yourself to speak to yourself that way. Again, going back to the dog training, you catch them when they're doing something right. Good job. Right then in the moment, good job. And using video in that way, good job. You're so smart. You're funny. Talking to yourself that way trains you to appreciate yourself and it builds your confidence. I do know how it feels though to resist watching oneself. And generally, it sounds weird. Generally, I love watching myself on video now. I mean, I can't wait. As soon as I'm done with the presentation, I can't wait to watch myself because I've trained myself to appreciate myself. And I'm always looking for where I can improve. Like you say in the filler words, my overuse of the word so and all right, those kinds of things. The one time that I resisted to the point of not watching a video of myself was when I went to it's down in Seattle. It's called Laughs Comedy Club. And I did a 5-minute set at Laughs. There were 300, this was right before the pandemic shut everything down. The month before, actually, it was February of 2020. There were 350 people there. And I felt like the first half of my set was fine. And the second half, I bombed. So this was the fall down comedy, not stand-up comedy, and I recorded it. I was terrified and horrified to watch it. And 3 months later, I mentioned it to somebody, and he's also a speaking coach. And he's come on, it's not going to be as bad. as you think. You've made it into this big monstrous thing. People are heckling you or whatever you're thinking, but I dare you to watch it tomorrow. So I went ahead and oh my gosh, my stomach was hurting while I was, pressing play, but he was absolutely right. It wasn't as bad as I made it up in my head to be. It was still bad, just not as bad as I thought.
It's so interesting. Even when you were talking about, first of all, I love the reframe around the way that we talk to ourselves, right? How many of us are ever really doing that? Like, good job, you're brilliant, that was awesome, and how much better would we all feel just going through our day if we were noticing the highlights and not the lowlights. But what came to mind when you said that piece about dog training and the importance of being positive, and clearly how this translates to ourselves on video, really doing anything, but also with children. And like, I just want to reflect how backwards we get it. I think the assumption, not only for ourselves, but then it passes along to the way that we parent our children, is that the assumption is that we are just going to do everything right. Right? That we know what's right, that we should be doing what's right. And so the attention then goes to when we're doing things wrong. And that's what we notice.
Yeah.
And it's just so backwards. It's so backwards for our self-esteem. It's so backwards for our children. It's, I've read many books on parenting because of my own parenting journey, and realizing that like those negative reflections, and especially for certain children, are like $50 bills, $100 bills. Like, why are we not energizing in the same way we do the negative stuff? But clearly we need to do it much better, even bigger, even better, the positive stuff.
Yes.
Right.
And yes. And to make the negative stuff more neutral.
Yes.
And the negative, like, this is just, I want you to redirect over here. Going back to dog training, I mean, imagine the dog trainer who puts so much emphasis on the no and just a little emphasis on the yes.
Right.
Then the dog, it throws the dog off balance because they're just bracing for the next horrible no, or the angry face, or whatever it is, the body language that they're seeing, versus the fully relaxed brain, face. Yes, good job. In giving feedback to human beings, whether they're under the age of 12 human beings or over the age of 30 human beings, it doesn't really matter. Filling up the bank account with the positive, so that when we do have a correction to make, something to tell that person, just to shift the way they're doing something, because the way they're doing it isn't helping, then they aren't bracing for that awful, they're not bracing, they're receptive. They can take it, they can move forward, and they're not feeling bad about themselves. Like, oh my gosh, I'm a loser. You hate me. I know you're mad at me. All of that crazy wasted energy on one's self.
Right.
On oneself.
Right. Well, and it's still, I think it's so important to remember that, at any age, it's so important to reframe the way that we, think about redirecting somebody or asking them to redirect, and how powerful it is to start from the standpoint of looking at what's going right.
Yes. Yes, right? Yes. Filling up the bank account with all the right. So when we do have a redirect, it's just neutral as that. Just a redirect. I was talking to a young man yesterday in the tech field, and I was telling him about one of my employees, my video in the video capacity. I hired him when he was 17 years old, and now he's 24 and working full time for somebody else. But if I do need him as a second camera, again, I'm trying not to do that much of that work. He would just tell his employer, hey, I've got to go work for Rebecca, because he's like a son to me. But what I would, when we would go out on these shoots, and then I would review his footage, and if there was something that that he did in terms of capturing the footage that wasn't what I expected, I always took it on myself. This is because I didn't give clear direction. I was not clear. Now I've learned I need to be clear, but I do also need to talk about this. I'm not going to do it when I'm upset. I'm not going to do it when I'm like, oh no, how do I fix this? I'm going to find another time when we're together, where it may be a day, 3 days, or a week, and where we can just talk about it in a very neutral way for the benefit of a future production. But I think in many work environments, the feedback, going in for your 90-day review, your annual review, you get the call, I need to speak to you, come to my office after work, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, this fear and insecurity starts bubbling up in us. What did I do wrong? Am I going to be fired? I mean, my first 90-day review, I actually was fired. So this is like post, what do you call that? Post 90-day review.
Traumatic stress.
Traumatic stress syndrome. Yeah. But in many companies, the review is a very stress-filled engagement. And how can we use some of these dog training best practices in our businesses to make it more of a neutral and positive experience for people?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because in watching the dog trainer, when she came to our house, like there was a level of stern at times, right? When there was some really persistent unwanted behaviors. But when she was doing something right, like her whole demeanor would change, and it was like fun. And she was just doing everything in her power to show the dog, like, yes, this is right. This is the correct way to do it.
Yes.
And, it was like that element of fun really stuck with me. It's important for pets. It's important for people. So I'm curious, in our few minutes left, what tips do you have for people? Because I know, beyond the confidence piece, there's like really practical things that we do wrong or get wrong in our, whether you're on video, whether you're on a stage. I know you work with speakers. What are some quick, like 2 or 3 tips that you find are most helpful for people to hear?
Well, in terms of if you are the speaker, having a mindset that it was 100% audience focused. It's really easy when we're on stage and we're feeling the nerves and the spotlights on us to get pulled into our own self, how I'm feeling, projecting on the audience what they're thinking of me, and it's all about us, this whole ego crazy thing. If we can shift the focus to our audience, I'm there to serve you. I've done my research. I know who you are. I know what you're expecting of me, and I'm here to give that to you and more, to exceed your expectations. Just that mind shift changes everything.
Right. Yeah. You're there to serve and, and hopefully connect through that service, rather than it being, like you said, this ego thing of overly concerned about self.
Yeah. And there was one last thing I wanted to share, and this goes back to in fact, a question I wanted to ask you. This goes back to my one woman show called The Confidence Equation. And here's the equation. The equation is courage equals knowledge plus experience, which takes us to confidence, which is MC squared. That's confidence in me. But doubt is actually what kicks off the equation, because you can't have courage without doubt. And usually what triggers doubt is an inspiration, an idea. So we grab onto an idea, and then the doubt comes in. It's already been done, probably better than you could ever do it. But the one step then is to use doubt as a fuel, as a trigger for courage, to step forward in courage. And whether you fall on your face like I did at that comedy club or not, I learned something, I gained knowledge, I gained experience, and that's what can lead me into the confidence zone. That's it.
I love your point about doubt. I think a lot of people mistakenly think like at some point I will have arrived, I will be done with this internal conversation where I'm experiencing self-doubt, right? And I know for people that work in this area and do a whole bunch of coaching, it's like, no, you just have new doubts related to a whole new level of performance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
just get comfortable with dealing with it and being in that conversation, you know?
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. Doubt. When you feel the doubt, you know, you're onto something big. You know, you're doing something right. When the doubt comes in, it's just a matter of turning to the doubt and going, yeah, you're right. And stopping you in the tracks or saying, thank you, doubt. Now it's my opportunity to step forward to learn something new.
Yeah, I love that. So Rebecca, talk to us. And I know you said you're doing less video production these days, but you're doing speaking, a lot of still presenting, I assume both on virtual and then, you know, possibly as we're reopening here in the real world, fingers crossed, right? Back on real stages.
Yes. Yes.
For folks that would like to connect with you and learn more about that and what you're up to, where do you like to send them?
To Rebecca, Rebecca, P as in Pierce.
That's
Murray,
right.
MURRAY.com, RebeccaPMurray.com, or showcaseyourshine.com will take you to the exact same place. That is my website, also on LinkedIn, which is just Rebecca P. Murray. And I would love to connect with you there. I do have regular classes that I am teaching, focused largely in the STEM community. That's where a lot of my clients are. Engineers. This is one thing, Rebecca, you can take any engineer and turn them into a Steve Jobs in terms of the way they speak. And that was the biggest compliment I've ever received in my life, by the way. I mean, because I adore the late, great Steve Jobs, but that is exactly what I do.
I love that. So you heard it. You can connect with her on her website or on LinkedIn, one of my favorite platforms as well. We will share those links and anything else you'd like us to share, Rebecca, in the show notes, which can be found at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Just find Rebecca's episode there. Rebecca, what final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with today?
It's what we just talked about at the end, I think. When the doubt comes in, embrace it. Don't run from it, because when you feel the doubt, you know you're on to something great.
Oh, that's such a great point to end on. Thank you, Rebecca. Such a pleasure to have you here today. Thanks so much for sharing a little bit about your story with us, a bit about confidence and video tips. If you're interested in learning more, pop over to Rebecca's links. And thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.